Well, welcome to the latest in our series of St Lawrence Faith Talks, and today I'm delighted to be joined by the Reverend Canon Alan Hodgetts. I'm especially delighted because he brought with him some wonderful biscuits. I've already had one, and we'll be having the rest later, so thank you for those.
You're welcome.
Alan is a retired priest, but a very active retired priest, and we might come to that later on. Alan, how long have you been actually ordained for?
I was ordained deacon in 1982.
That's quite a long time, isn't it?
That's 40 years, yeah.
Yeah, and you were an engineer before that?
I worked for Rover Cars. I did an apprenticeship for 5 years, so I joined Rover Cars in 1970.
Right. And then you went to train at St Stephen's House?
I did, Staggers as it was known as it probably is still. Yeah, in 1979. So 9 years engineer.
And your principal was?
David Hope.
Who became the Archbishop of?
York.
Fantastic. And then you went conventionally into parish ministry. Where did you serve your where have you served as a parish priest?
As a parish priest, well, I did 2 curacies.
Yeah.
I served my title, as it's known, in the parish of St John's Perry Bar, Birmingham.
Yeah. And you're a Birmingham boy.
Lovely,
Yeah.
So I still am, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went from the Birmingham diocese to the Hereford diocese to a parish in Shropshire,
Yeah.
called Brawlsley,
Yeah.
on the side of the River Severn. So if anyone's been to Blissett Hill Museum, which is awesome, at Iron Bridge, that was across the river from where we lived.
Brilliant. And then you went to?
I went to a parish in Guildford, which was the parish of St Lawrence Effingham with All Saints Little Bookham.
Yeah.
There for 9 years. And after that, I went in 1996, we moved to the parish of St John the Evangelist, Merrow, which is in Guildford itself.
Okay. And then?
I went to prison.
You went to prison. You had a complete change of orientation.
I did.
What prompted that for you, do you think? We have to say he went to prison as a chaplain.
As a chaplain, yeah. I think it was precipitated by the death of a particular parishioner I was very fond of.
Okay.
Called Tim Chambers, who had epilepsy and had a tragic accident and died as a consequence. And I kind of, my son was a great fan of Bob Marley, and it was good friends we've lost along the way. No Woman, No Cry is the song.
I remember it.
And,
No Woman, No Cry.
That's the one. And I kind of thought, well, as a parish priest, you're making friends with people. You really get to know them.
Yeah.
And then some of them sadly die. And I kind of felt, I'm not sure if I could do this again.
Right.
So can I reinvent myself? The Church of England isn't a particularly good place for reinvention.
Right.
So it's sort of got the parish model as the only one that sort of is kosher.
And you still think that's true?
Yeah, I think that's the way the Church of England still ticks. That somehow all ministry is about parish ministry, and if you go into what's called sector ministry, then somehow it's kind of not quite the thing. And they call it sector ministry, and you fall off the radar, which is what happened in the diocese. But I loved it. I was there for it till 2019, from 2006.
Brilliant. And what were the joys of prison ministry? And actually, the frustrations of prison ministry.
The joys, well, I love people, and I loved all the people in the prison. It was Woodhill in Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
Prisoners and staff. I just loved them all.
So you're chaplain to the whole prison
community. Not in a kind of not in a kissy kind of way. It was a kind of, I just loved getting alongside people, talking to them, hearing their stories.
Yeah.
Stories are very important to me, stood at people's lives. And I developed a great affection for the prisoners. And what was great is that the staff developed a great affection for me. So I can't think of anyone in Woodhill who didn't know me by name, although I may not have known all their names. And we had about 800 prisoners when I joined, and probably about the same number of staff, not just wing staff, but ancillary staff as well.
And did you find in the prison, and I know this is an important word to you, I know you're a Benedictine oblate, for instance, did you find a real sense of community working in that particular type of ministry?
Yeah, without doubt. And another key phrase of Benedictine spirituality is stability. And I was 9 years in 2 parishes as parish priest, so
Yeah.
18.
Yeah.
So almost 25 years in parish ministry, and stability. So the joys were the prisoners and having a laugh and getting to know them and helping them. And
In what way were you helping, would you say?
prisoners, there was something about being a chaplain that broke through barriers, and I well remember a Catholic priest that I knew who was a former naval chaplain,
Right.
who said that the naval chaplain, the way that they operate is that they take on the rank of the person they're talking to.
Yeah.
So whether they're a sapper or whether they're
The Rear Admiral.
admiral or whatever,
Yeah.
or whatever
Yeah.
the ranks are in the Navy, and I'd found that I actually do that. I don't. Clearly, if you're in the presence of someone who has a bit of gravitas, there is a response to them.
Yeah.
But I always try to meet people on an even playing field, and that was with prisoners. And I think they got a sense of that. They kind of trusted me, they respected me. Never promised anything because you can't always keep promises. But I always did my best to help people.
So there's that coming alongside people who, in a sense, have to be very real because of where they are.
Yeah.
There's working with other people that are there as, because they have a sense of vocation, governors
absolutely.
and so on.
Yeah.
What about, and the heavy sort of emphasis on pastoral care, were you able to exercise sort of sacramental ministry in the prison?
The Eucharist, I presided at the Eucharist every week, so that was central. That was like for me, the Eucharist is like a stone drops in a pool and all the ripples go out. It's the centre of my week. It was the thing that kind of kept me in focus, and so sacramental ministry. We had one baptism that I well remember. A guy called David, who wanted to be baptised as an Anglican. And he wanted a full immersion.
Wow.
So managed to facilitate that.
So what did you do?
I baptised him.
Yeah, but how did you do the full immersion? That's what I'm more interested in, the actual, the mechanics.
The mechanics of it. Well, I had to get hold of a paddling pool, but it was a portable font, basically, baptistry.
Wow.
From a church in Milton Keynes, and they kindly loaned it to me and to us. It took ages to fill up. And then I stood in it with David in my alb and stole, and there were some Baptists there, and I, of course, being an Anglican, I baptised in the name of the Father, spladoosh, and of the Son, spladoosh, and of the Holy Spirit, spladoosh, and I managed to get his mum and his dad in the prison, and I think it was his gran, he might have been his godmother, there as well. So it was and he had sponsors, prisoners who he was pally with. So those are some of the joys, those little things that kind of shine out from the time in prison.
And I used to occasionally meet you at the crematorium.
Yes.
When you were a prison chaplain. And how often would you do funerals for prisoners?
Well, thankfully not often. I did the most moving funerals were members of staff, which I conducted. At least one I can well remember, and a few for prisoners. And it tended to be usually if they died by suicide.
Yeah. So there's real tragedy and.
Oh my God! Yeah. I mean, it's and I don't mean that blasphemously. It was oh my God! It was terrible.
Yeah.
And whenever anyone dies by suicide, it is like a tsunami. From the death radiates out this incredible storm wave that just knocks staff and prisoners and family, and it ripples out. So those were the hardest times, but it's kind of horses for courses, and somehow God gave me the grace to be able to do that for people and do it creatively and helpfully.
And you had the huge pleasure, didn't you, of working alongside other Christian denominations. We know that we both know the Roman Catholic chaplain.
Yeah.
But
I appointed him at Woodhill. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
But imams and members of
other
imams,
faiths. And it was a multi-faith chaplaincy, and I loved that aspect of, they say all roads lead to Rome, and it was kind of a real sense of different paths, same destination, different people journeying along the way. So I loved Islam, I still do. I mean, it's a very noble religion. And I got to know the Hindu. Mukesh was the Hindu chaplain. And in the latter couple of years, I had a lovely Rastafarian chaplain, because Rastafari became...
Back to Bob Marley.
Bob Marley, yeah. They became, and that became part of the PSI. We were able to deliver ministry to Rastafarians, with the exception of cannabis, of course, which is...
not allowed.
Which is not permitted, though somehow it manages to find its way into jail sometimes. And so we had a lovely team of chaplains. I absolutely loved the chaplains.
If somebody came to you or to me or to a church or to the diocese and said, do you know what, I've loved being a parish priest, but I've just got this sense that it might be something else, and it might be prison ministry.
Yeah.
How would somebody go about exploring that and testing that as vocation? Because as you said, it's very easy to test vocation to a parish, or to parish priesthood, but how would you actually do that?
I think probably as a volunteer. There's an organisation called Prison Fellowship.
Yeah.
And their main vocation as an organisation is to pray for people in prison.
Right.
But they also offer programmes, the best, I call it the flagship course of chaplaincy, was called the Sycamore Tree Project.
Right.
And that's a restorative justice programme, victim awareness. And volunteers would come in from Prison Fellowship. So praying for prisoners, getting to know where Prison Fellowship might meet. They meet in Milton Keynes. Volunteering. We had a couple of theological students came and did placements. It's a dickens of a job to get security clearance. That's the thing that kind of deters people, because it can take over 6 months to get the clearance to go into, particularly into Woodhill, which was a Cat A jail, and still you have to have the highest level of counter-terrorism clearance to get in there.
Okay.
But volunteer, have a chat with me or someone else who might be a chaplain.
Okay. You'd be happy for people to make contact with you and say...
Yeah.
And how would they do that, Alan?
Well, they can contact me through the diocese. I'm on what's called the spider list, the spiritual direction list of the diocese. So they can contact me, just contact the diocese and ask, can I speak to Alan, or just Google me. You'll probably find me pop up somewhere on...
Or a member of our church.
Yeah.
And we'll put
St.
you
Lawrence,
in touch.
yeah, and anyone in Winslow, yeah.
And more broadly than prison chaplaincy, is there a way for churches who might be interested in not just volunteering in prisons, but welcoming ex-offenders into the church as part of the church family? Is there a way that can be made easier for churches to get involved?
There's a project that I'd love Winslow to become a part of. It's called the Welcome Directory.
Yeah.
And the Welcome Directory is a directory of places of worship that welcome people who've been in prison. And there's a logo that presumably one would put on a church notice board, that the representative who was from that organisation would have the logo. So it's not it's a case of local prisons would be, and the Welcome Directory would notify people who've been in prison, who've been released. Because if you look at prisoners who go to chapel, for instance, I think for every maybe 30 prisoners who go to chapel, there might only be one who would be brave enough to go through a church door. And it's quite daunting going to a church, opening a church door, which can be quite heavy, and with the best will in the world, it's difficult to welcome. So it's kind of befriending, sitting alongside, helping. That would be great if St. Lawrence could be a member of the Welcome Directory.
But it's real gospel stuff, isn't it?
Oh my goodness!
Because it's still part of letting the prisoner free to be themselves in community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's I like the term people who've been in prison. They're people.
Yeah.
And they've gone off the rails in different ways, but normally if you talk to them, you can. It doesn't excuse what they've done, but it explains why. Drug addiction, for instance, the pain some of those guys have experienced is unbelievable. And
therefore, but the grace of God.
Absolutely. I remember seeing one lad. We used to see new prisoners, and the guy had just come into jail, and he was called what's rattling. So he was just beginning to feel withdrawal from the drugs, and needed to go and get his script from the pharmacy. And I remember saying, "I won't keep you, lad. You know, you must go and get your script." And I didn't think, "What's wrong with you?" I thought, "What's happened to you?"
Yeah.
And I still feel it now. I mean, that's heartbreaking, because it's just the stories that lay behind, the narratives that lay behind their lives is horrendous.
I think it was C.T. Stubbs who said, "True mission takes place a yard from the gate of hell," and you must have kind of experienced that in a very real sense.
Yeah, but there were laughs as well.
Sure.
But I mean, one prisoner, he was one guy. I won't tell you his name because it's quite an unusual one. But he was a black African guy on the wings. And when I went onto the wings, he did that. And I said, why do you do that? He says, "It's for love and respect."
Oh, wow.
And the guy was in prison for gun crime. So there's a fella who had in that hand a gun,
yeah,
who did that to me out of love and respect. And it kind of...
Sure.
It just gives you glimpses of what the kingdom could be like. But unfortunately, jail is used as a... It's still more retributive than restorative. That's the biggest sadness, I think, about prison. And unfortunately, it's politically driven.
To return to, you mentioned politically driven.
Yes.
But without going into that, how... a lot of the Church of England is ecclesiologically driven. It's about the parish.
Yes.
You still feel that frustration that sector ministry isn't given the... whatever the word is.
I think it's... hello, doggy. I think it's because people don't understand. It's those... the command of the people on the right and people on the left. I was in prison, you came to me. I was sick and you visited me. Hungry, you fed me. I mean, things like the food cupboard, for instance. They're all the key ministries. They're the charisms of a loving church. But for historical reasons, the church has been... You use the word church and you see a tower and you see a building and you see a parish. When you ask any Anglican to define the church, and they will show you a map and they'll give you the outline of the parish, and that's the way we tick, and that's fair enough. I'm not criticising it, but it's kind of it's weird, because when I became prison chaplain, I never fully believed that there wouldn't be a way of fitting into the life. You go to a deanery chapter meeting, for instance, and that was talking about faculty regulations for church art. Well, how's that going to impinge upon the life of a chaplain? So yeah, it was like parish in reverse. It was almost like I became a member of the congregation, rather than the clergy are the governors and then the officers, and I was sort of halfway between, and I quite liked that. I liked it was a kind of a role reversal, and that helped me a great deal to kind of get my feet back on the ground again.
You've been retired 2 years now.
Yes.
Over. You moved to Winslow. You're involved in the life of the church. You preach. You preside.
Yes.
What else do you do as a retired priest, particularly in the sort of parish context?
Well, when COVID hit our shores, which was literally within months of me retiring, I had what's called it sounds like please turn over, PTO, little green card, permission to officiate. We were all then told, all the retired clergy, that you must not officiate because of COVID, and it was kind of everything was online, and so I didn't quite know. We lived in Newton Longville before we moved here, and we decided this felt like we were being drawn to this particular parish. Yeah. So fortunately, we managed to sell our house and buy a house down by the Spinney Meadow, which is lovely, and in the parish gradually. I mean, thanks to you and the parish for sort of welcoming me, inviting me to take a funeral, which I loved. Sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? But there's something about it where it kind of brings everything into focus.
It's normal priestly ministry.
It is normal priestly ministry, yeah. And I preached, loved that. I celebrated the midnight mass at Great Hallwood, and that was great fun. I loved that. And we have the Julian group,
which you started. That was your baby.
Well, yeah, I've always loved contemplative prayer is my go-to, I suppose.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine had started a Julian group in Oxford.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder if we could start a Julian group in Winslow, because I knew there was a good ecumenical kind of connection between different people. And I bumped into Joe on a walk, and I mentioned it, and I said, do you think people might be interested in contemplative prayer? Oh, I think so. She said, I'll put some feelers out. Yep. So we have the Julian meeting once a month, first Monday of the month, and actually Zoom works incredibly well.
Yeah.
Really well. So we meet for half an hour, 8 till 8:30. So that's a regular. That's kind of like a focal point for me in the parish, and whatever else happens is a bonus, really.
Well, Alan, it's been really good to have you with us in the parish, but it's been really good you've been able to bring to our parish the experience of non-parochial ministry, prison ministry.
Yeah.
And all the wisdom of just being ordained a reasonable length of time as well.
Yeah, it's my Ruby anniversary next year, so I don't know if there's a thing that you can do as a priest, but that might be fun.
Well, we should see what we can do.
And of course, I mustn't forget Sue. She doesn't just make lemon cookies.
She makes lemon drizzle cake for vicars
as well.
she's
my rock without question, and she'll kick me for saying it, but she is.
Well, it's been wonderful to have you with us. It's been wonderful to talk to you this morning, and thank you for sharing all your insights on a really rich ministry in parish, in prison, which you obviously still feel incredibly passionate about.
Yeah, it was enriching, yeah.
And also on contributions and involvement that you make on a wider scale as one of on our team.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you, Alan.
You too, Andrew.
Thank you.
Bless you.